Welcome to There She Is, the podcast by Women's Sport and Recreation Tasmania. This is a space for celebrating women in sport, the athletes, coaches, administrators, volunteers, and leaders who shape our sporting communities. We talk pathways, visibility, lived experience, and what works for women in sport right here in Tasmania and beyond. Because representation matters and every story deserves to be seen.
Hey everyone, it's Philippa here from Women's Sport and Rec Tasmania, and I have Katherine Reed with us today from ParaQuad Tasmania to tell us about all things wheelchair basketball. So thanks so much for joining the conversation today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we're specifically going to talk about your Her Path to Play program and wheelchair basketball and who's eligible to join in, because often there's a big misconception about who can participate. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I think that's been one of my main issues so far in getting people into this program has just been a lack of awareness about who really can play and who does qualify, because we have a lot of players who don't use a wheelchair full time and some who you might pass in the street and not even realise they have a physical disability. So it can be, for people who are new to the sport, really confusing as to who is and isn't allowed to play. Yes, we all play in a wheelchair basketball chair, but a lot of us don't use them regularly. So we use a classification system like all parasports, and that means that there are certain conditions that a person has to fulfill to classify as having enough of impairment to play. So there's 5 different physical disabilities, different categories that you can look at. There's loss of limbs, so someone who's missing a leg. There's muscle weakness and impaired muscle power. So I have a spinal cord injury. Spinal cord injury in itself isn't a classification category, but under muscle weakness and impaired muscle power, I definitely qualify under that. So that's how I'm classified with a spinal cord injury. We have coordination impairments, so things that affect your balance. So someone with an acquired brain injury may have enough of an impact on their balance and coordination that they could classify. Restricted joint movement and passive joint. And restricted passive joint is where a lot of previous athletes would fall in under this category. So things like netballers who've had their knees stuffed from running around netball courts could potentially classify under restricted joint movement. So there's a lot of people who've had surgeries on their knees, hips, ankles who actually qualify for wheelchair basketball in terms of having replacements, etc. And leg length difference. So that can be where the amputation stuff can come in. But yeah, and with loss of limbs, like it doesn't have to be a whole leg missing. The start minimum criteria is missing a big toe. So if you're missing a big toe, you should definitely be having a look into this, because it's entirely possible that you would classify. So within those 5 conditions, for a person to qualify for classification, you have to have something that is measurable. It has to be permanent, and there is a third criteria that I can't remember right now. Permanent, measurable, and it has to affect your lower body. Yeah. So if you're missing an arm, that won't qualify you to play wheelchair basketball. It will give you a big classification handicap if you happen to be missing a leg as well. There's a guy in Brazil who's missing 2 legs and an arm, I think, and he's fantastic. Wow. You would not think that he could play.
Incredible. This is fascinating, because most people are going to assume have to be in a wheelchair, but missing a big toe, stuffed knees from netball.
Yeah.
These are really significant entry points that a lot more people could be involved with, right?
Yes. And that's sort of what I'm trying to do at the moment, is particularly going into, I've sort of aimed with basketball to start with because that's my sport, but I'm trying to get into clubs and associations and talk to them and their leadership about the kind of people that actually qualify for this, because there will be players in all of those sports who have retired because they are injured. They don't consider themselves to have a disability, but they're no longer able to play able-bodied basketball. And so it's entirely possible that they classify for parasport.
And what an incredible pathway for someone who loves movement to then have a restriction from an injury to know that there's something else that can fill their cup, that competitive spirit and physical exertion.
Yes, I've had a few teammates over the years who that's exactly what's happened. They've come from playing able-bodied sport and through personal connections or whatever have discovered wheelchair basketball and then found out, hey, wait a minute, I'm actually classifiable to play, and have ended up playing in National League and all sorts.
Cool. And so the classification process, I've spoken with another para athlete before, it can be quite involved, but To get started in your program, for example, I'm guessing you don't have to go through all the measures straight away.
No, we will take anyone who turns up basically in terms of numbers. Once I get more than 10 athletes with legitimate physical disabilities, I'll start being a bit more picky about who I do and don't let on the court. So I should qualify. I have a weekly program run out of Westbury. So we play on Friday nights from 5 till 6:30. Almost every week we play wheelchair basketball. And there are details on ParaQuad's Facebook page that you can, and on their website where you can find details and register for that. But so on a weekly basis, I will pretty much take anyone who turns up. I largely encourage people who think they might be classifiable to play to bring along a friend, or especially if they're kids. Introducing kids to a new sport can be really daunting anyway. And a lot of us are adults, so kids especially, we encourage them to bring along a sibling or a school friend. And my youngest player is 5 or 6. So we have a huge age range. We have a huge range of disabilities. Our women's series, the Her Path to Play, we are specifically looking for people who have physical disabilities and trying to enter them into sport. And we're looking for women and girls and trying to create that community and building those social connections and stuff as well. So we had our first event on the weekend just been, and there was a lot of, we obviously did a lot of basketball, we did a lot of chair stuff. There was also a lot of sitting around eating muffins and talking and abilities and all that sort of thing as well. And and building new friendships and catching up with old friends.
So tell me, what is it that you love about wheelchair basketball the most?
There's a few different things I really love about it. Obviously, in terms of my physical and mental health, it's really good for me. I love the community side of it. These days I play in the Women's National League with Victoria. I've sort of gone back the last couple of years to playing that after having kids, and I really enjoy it. And I love getting to go with my old teammates and travel with them and play. And I love the thinking aspect of the game at National League. There's a lot of the nuances and the game strategy and all that sort of stuff, which we don't tend to get so much here. There's a lot. I'm still teaching the group I play with all the rules, so I don't get that kind of challenging mental aspect of it here that I do with the National League. But I'm really enjoying introducing new players to the game as well. So I've got a young lady who I work with who's 14. She's been playing with me for about 18 months. And she's someone who's in just the right age bracket that if she wants to be going on and doing college basketball and going and trying for the Australian team, she's got a good couple of years lead up to that sort of point where we can work on stuff and get her prepared for it without having to go over the top. I was well and truly out of university when I started playing, like university mindset by the time I started playing. So I never even considered that I could go and play university ball or college ball in America like the girls coming through these days can. It would have been an incredible experience. So I'm really excited for them that they get to, that they can have those kind of opportunities, and I can help them find them in a way that I didn't, because it just wasn't quite that kind of access and everything when I started playing. I was also started playing at a time when the gliders were pretty much at their strongest. And at the moment, the team sort of had a bit of a lull over the last decade or so, and they're just starting to build up and gain momentum again now. So it's kind of exciting to watch the girls coming up like that. The other thing I really love about it is the way that being in a team of people with disabilities really can ground you. I broke my back when I was 19, and we didn't have anyone really in our community who had physical disabilities that we knew, and definitely not anyone in a wheelchair. So there was a lot of people gathering around me and telling me, like reminding me that my life wasn't over and that I had all these opportunities still and that things could be really great for me. And that was awesome, but it did also give me a little bit of a sense of entitlement, I think. Also, I was 19. I had a sense of entitlement anyway. But being a part of a team sport really grounded me. And yes, you can do this and you can represent your country. You can do all these things, but you do still have to earn them. We're not just going to give them to you because you're in a wheelchair. So that was really good for me personally. So I think teenagers and young adults with disabilities, I think there's a lot of really good balance that team sports, para-team sports brings. But the flip side of that is being around so many other people with disabilities is they teach you so much stuff that you can't learn in rehab and you can't learn out of a book. And they're the ones who show you how to navigate spaces, how to navigate people, what all the cool gadgets and tricks are, and which ones are just a complete waste of money. So there's lots of really great aspects, like all these things that come into it that I really love. So
Yeah, it sounds like you're building an amazing environment that's well needed, and it's great to see so many opportunities. There's a lot happening in sort of the para space at the moment. What's sort of making you most excited about the changes in sport and opportunities for people with disabilities?
it's really nice to see para athletes being treated like real athletes. When I first started playing basketball in Tassie, I was the only female player who was interested. I was pretty much the only female player in the state, apart from a couple of people who were still kind of hanging on, just playing for fun. And I was certainly the only one who was interested in playing competitively. There were two other boys a couple of years younger than me who were also interested in playing interstate. So I would drive myself to Hobart every weekend for a 2-hour training session with them. The TIS didn't acknowledge para athletes really at that point either. So I managed to get on scholarship with the VIS when I moved to Melbourne, but I've never had a scholarship with the TIS. Whereas there are athletes who are on scholarship with the TIS now who play wheelchair basketball, and there are people who are involved in the new sort of intro to para sports sessions that they're doing, where they will take them around the state and run different para sport days for them, sort of thing. So I've done 2 as a coach where I have run a session for wheelchair basketball. So helping those athletes or these people who are coming into the TIS program knowing that they're interested in para sport but don't have a sport yet and aren't sure what fits them and suits them, can come along and try wheelchair basketball. So, yeah, it's been a good opportunity. The Victorians are currently running a really good wheelchair basketball program and have lots of stuff to share with us. They have a introductory program for for girls and women who are interested in playing. And so the Victorian team had around 20, 25 people try out for the National League team this year, I think, which is enormous. So we have the potential there to be almost combining with Victoria to get a TAS team in the Women's League in the coming years. I'd say it's a good 2 or 3 years off yet, but it's one of my sort of mid to long term goals is to get that happening. So, and Basketball Tasmania are actually talking to me now and to ParaQuad Tasmania, and so that's helpful. Within wheelchair basketball technically comes under the state body with Basketball Tasmania and comes under the national body of Basketball Australia because of the sport that we are. So if the state basketball league doesn't acknowledge us and want anything to do with it, it makes it very, very difficult for anyone in the state to actually be able to achieve anything and for any type of league to be set up or any pathways. So I do at least have the TIS and Basketball Tasmania at the table now to be able to set up something. So
Yeah.
very beginning
Little
stages.
slowly bits of progress chipping away.
Yeah.
Is there anything you think other clubs might need to know, or athletes involved in other sports, that would just help them take the dive in here, or if they don't necessarily think that their disability is significant enough?
A lot of people don't even consider their particular injury as a disability. So the first thing is going to be talking to people in clubs and letting them know what kind of injuries, what kind of impairments people have are going to be things that they can take to parasport. They can go through the TIS para athlete program. And I was just about to tell you about this rower I heard about the other day who was an able-bodied rower for ages and then got involved with then I realised it was you talking to her.
Ella, we love Ella.
Yeah.
She's in another episode everyone needs to listen to.
Okay, good.
No, she's amazing though, wasn't she? She competed as an able-bodied athlete.
Yes.
Like to her whole career, and then has had an explosion of success, progressing very fast, which is incredible.
Yes. Yeah. So they can, if they're unsure, they can come to ParaQuad and talk to myself or one of our other sports coordinators about classification and the sort of range we have in wheelchair basketball. Paralympics Australia also have some great resources around different classifications, who's eligible. And there are other categories that you are eligible. There are other categories that allow you to participate in parasport that don't necessarily apply to wheelchair basketball. So vision loss, for example, isn't a classifiable disability for wheelchair basketball, but there are other parasports. So Paralympics Australia has a really good breakdown of what kind of what kind of issues do qualify for parasports and which parasports you qualify for if you have one of those disabilities or issues. And then from there, they also have links to how to start looking at classification stuff. So the wheelchair basketball, you'll generally need your doctor or physio to fill out the form that they provide, and you'll send that in. Someone will have a look over it and go, yes, this looks like you're eligible, or no, you're definitely not. If you're eligible, then you'll then go on to the next stage, and they'll give you a preliminary classification, and then they'll come and watch you play and get in a room with you one-on-one and have a chat with you and that sort of thing. Some people, I'm a T4-5 complete spinal cord injury. Mine is a very simple classification. I just don't, there's no way I can physically, with a complete injury, have any of the muscle usage that would make me at all complicated. So I'm just a flat out 1-point player, which is our lowest classification. And then wheelchair basketball, we got to a 4.5, which would be someone probably missing a foot or something. And then to keep it even, we're only allowed 14 points on a court at once. So that's how we keep the teams even, and how we allow the different disabilities, or like all the different disabilities, to be a part of the team and a part of the game.
Yeah, cool. So at what point do people sort of explore the full classification? Like if you're wanting to get started, is that when you're still exploring sport options, or once you're sort of getting to state level?
You might be classified in a couple of different sports if you're not sure. Sometimes your classification will actually determine whether that's a sport you pursue or not. So if you're classified in a way that's kind of unfavourable, for lack of a better term, you might go, okay, then if I've got two sports that I'm choosing from and I love both of them, I'll go with the one that gives me a better opportunity, where my classification suits better for the sport. Generally speaking, people get classified after they know that they're quite interested in a sport. So you have to be classified to play in the national leagues in Australia. So we've got the men's and women's national leagues. You don't have to be classified to play in any of our Tasmanian groups. We have a group in Ulverston. We have a group in Westbury, which I run, and then we have another group in Hobart. ParaQuad also runs quad rugby in Hobart, and we have other bits and pieces that we put on occasionally. My group had a badminton session recently. And if it's not something that we run, part of our job is connecting you with groups and people who do run those kind of sports. There are also competitions like the Victorian State League, which is about to start. And I think that's one that you would be classified for, but you don't have to go into it with a classification already. Basically, you'd go into it with having put your paperwork in for a classification and going, okay, I don't know what I am exactly. I'm probably roughly, they've given you a preliminary classification. And so I've done my classifiers training recently. So I did my initial in the classroom training the end of last year. And then this year, I'll be going to the Victorian State League as a trainee classifier to finish my training. So to get to sit in the room and talk to athletes and to watch on the side of the court and make sure that the classification that the board is giving, that the panel's giving, is there for them and the rest of the players.
Yeah, awesome. So I would love to hear more about your journey and how you started. I think you said you were 19 when you broke your back. I believe you're a horsey jockey and had an accident. How long was it after that you discovered basketball?
Yeah, so I was working towards being a apprentice jockey when I was 19, and I had a riding accident at work and broke my back. I had no intention of team sports or anything like that at that point. Someone told me while I was still in hospital that, look, you'll be able to play wheelchair basketball now. And I told them in not so many words to get lost, I hate basketball. Sometimes I have to eat my words. I've had to eat them a lot. Turns out wheelchair basketball and able water basketball are very different games. I know the other thing that I love about playing wheelchair basketball, is people have this idea that people with disabilities, people in wheelchairs, are kind of frail and fragile, and they treat us very differently without intending to. It can sometimes be patronising. The thing I love about wheelchair basketball is the fact that it is so physical and intense, and that you get to go out there and smash chairs. There's rules around you can smash and when and how, but you can get out there and it's it's very physical, and there are chairs going flying and people falling out and all that sort of stuff. And it's fast and it's hard and it's loud, and it's just really challenges that stereotype. And I'm someone who gets a lot of joy from that kind of thing. So I do really enjoy that aspect of it.
Love it. A bit of stress relief in there as well.
Yes, very good for stress relief, especially when you win. Yes, so when I had my accident, I had no intention of trying wheelchair basketball. I had no interest in it. The leisure and rec coordinator at Royal Talbot, where I did my rehab, was he was part of the men's team in Sydney, and he basically pestered me and annoyed me until I agreed to try. And so, yeah, largely due to him that I had a go at it while I was in Talbot, and turned out I did like it. The way that a basketball chair moves in comparison to what we call a day chair, my chair that I'm in every day, is it's just a real sense of freedom, I suppose. They move really beautifully. You're strapped into them, so any movement that you do make with your body is kind of amplified with the chair. So it means that the little bit of muscle that I do have in order to be able to spin or whatever, it feels a lot more powerful in a basketball chair. They're a lot faster, generally speaking. They turn beautifully compared to a day chair. And so there's a real kind of sense of freedom in moving in a basketball chair as opposed to a day chair. Totally impractical for everyday life for a bunch of reasons. But there's I do really like the feel of being in a basketball chair on a court as opposed to being my day chair. And I think I got enough of a taste of that when I very first tried in rehab that I could sort of go, okay, there might be something here for me. And I just joined up with our local group when I first started playing, and I remember
What was
seeing
the timeline when you first tried?
I would have been at the local group, I'd say within 6 months of being home. I can't remember if I was driving. It took a few months to get my car, and so I can't set up. So I can't remember if I went before I was driving myself or if it was once I was driving. I think we ordered me a basketball chair while I was still in rehab, or very quickly after as well. And so, yeah, getting into that and having my own that was measured up to fit me and my body really helped as well. And then it didn't take very long. I was back at school so I had my accident at the start of the year in February. By the school year starting a year after, I was at the point where I was, I think, almost traveling interstate and going to the regional competitions in Victoria and stuff. So I'd just join up with one of the teams over there. And at that point, they were running a junior parasport camp out of Geelong at the uni, and they'd have athletes come along and you'd stay in the uni dorms, and the basketballers would go down to the basketball courts, and they'd have a track and field group who went off to the track and field centre, and whoever else. There were a few different types of athletes that they'd have. And that was where I made my first wheelchair basketball friends. One of the coaches who was facilitating it is one of my teammates these days. She's been an Australian rep and good friend of mine. And so I think I was definitely there for my 21st birthday. I think we had wheelchair tennis as well, because some of them had ended up going to the Australian Open because it was over that weekend in January. And yeah, and it was a really great way to connect with a heap of the Victorian kids and stuff. And so those first few years, myself and the boys down south, any junior stuff we did was with the Victorian team, and they've always been my basketball home, I suppose, because my basketball career's always been based out of Victoria. I moved there for a couple of years to train and play in the lead up to the under-23 World Championships in 2011, which I was a part of the Australian team, which was very special and a real honour. And that was also in the lead up to the London 2012 Paralympics. So I was part of the shadow squad that they selected the London team from. So I spent a good couple of years sort of based out of Melbourne before I went off and did some more study, and then came home and got married and had kids. And yeah, I think I've done about seven or eight seasons with the Victorian team in the Women's League in under three club names. So yeah.
And it was really obvious with the most recent Commonwealth Games, seeing the para athletes competing at the same time as the able-bodied athletes. I don't notice that they've done that before. Was that new in these ones?
I'm actually not sure, because the 3-on-3 is only a fairly new structure in terms of international competition. But yes, it's very cool to see the Wombats be able to go along and compete alongside the able-bodied athletes. We have our World Championships for wheelchair basketball, but they aren't held in conjunction with any able-bodied competitions, as far as I know. So yeah, we don't often get to see them quite so parallel as with the Commonwealth Games. So,
Yeah, so cool. So
yeah.
tell us a little bit more. Tell us all about the Her Path to Play program that's happening across Tassie. We've had the first one recently.
Okay, so this has been my kind of baby, my project, because I have been quite involved in women and girls basketball for quite a long time. I've really understood how important it's been for me in terms of my recovery from my injury, in terms of my growth as a person, as an athlete, as a person with a disability. And I think it's also been really important for me in terms of accepting my injury and my disability and really understanding the way to sort of how to make the most of it. Being around people who've been in a chair for a lot longer than you have when you're new really can show you just how it takes it from being about all the stuff you've lost and all the restrictions you've got to being, well, actually, I can still do this, this, and this. So I think it's very valuable in that way. And that was something that I really wanted to bring to the Tasmanian community. So I understand that as the boys tend to be a bit faster and stronger, especially if they've been playing for a while. And so that can be a really intimidating environment for someone to come into if they are new to the sport and not sure if it's something that they want to give a go or not. I work a fair bit in schools doing sessions with school kids, and it's something I see, I've noticed a lot there is that the boys are all gun ho and get in, have a go. And the girls, if they're not sure, and especially if they're kind of worried about making a bit of a fool of themselves, will hang back and not have a go. Whereas if you give them the chance without the boys there, they are just as brave and they're just as good and everything else. They just need a little bit more space sometimes to get
Sure.
moving. And also the conversations that you have around women and girls are different than what you would have around boys and men. And so that's, I suppose, part of the reason that I see the importance of a women and girls program is for those things that you just aren't comfortable conversations to have around the boys and the men, as well as making it a bit easier and a bit more comfortable from the sports side of things. So when we got the opportunity for the grant to be able to run this program, there's that's sort of what we've sort of taken that, and it's based around wheelchair basketball, quite frankly, because I'm the only female facilitator we have and it's my project and I'm a wheelchair basketballer. But having said that, I'm going to Hobart next, and I know that a few of the girls I'm hoping to get there are wheelchair rugby players. So wheelchair rugby tends to be basketball, we talk about impairments in the lower limbs. Wheelchair rugby tends to be more for people who have impairments in their upper limbs as well. So quite a few of them will have issues with holding a ball or with grip. Some of them may be missing hands, that sort of thing. So when it comes to having them turn up, if I've got girls like that who are turning up, I'm just changing the session to suit who I've got there. So it will be less about ball handling and shooting and more about chair skills and how to move our chairs well. And we run with what we've got. If we've got people there who all want to play basketball and they're all capable of it, then we'll do that. If we don't, it'll be tweaked a bit and they will be skills that will be for basketball, but they can also be used in quad rugby or in para tennis and that sort of thing as well. But for me, a large part of it is about bringing the group together and allowing those women and girls to spend time together and form those connections and meet new people and get all those hidden benefits you get from being around other women and girls with disability and the support.
Oh, it sounds amazing. I'm loving all the effort you've put into this and bringing it to life. How long are the sessions and are they free or is there any charge?
So the program is funded. We're not charging our athletes to come along or potential athletes. They are going to be running for 3 hours. We provide the wheelchair basketballs, all the equipment. I'm qualified as a wheelchair basketball coach as well as having my coaching accreditations from community coaching stuff. And I did make muffins and moon cake to the last one. So we had a bit
A
of
repeat of that coming?
that sort of thing. I'm a bit of a baker. I like to feed people, so probably. I don't know. Yeah, just want to really emphasize the fact that there are a lot of conditions that make people classifiable for parasport that they wouldn't necessarily think of and don't necessarily even think about themselves as having a disability. There's a massive big area in the middle between able-bodied athletes and people in wheelchairs. Huge spectrum. And if you've got any questions about whether you or someone that you love maybe, or someone that you don't even like that much, but you know of might be eligible, then it's really worth asking the question. And Paralympics Australia have some great resources about who is eligible, and it's really easy to look up. And hopefully we'll have some stuff to share alongside the podcast that can make it even easier for people. And yes, if you're a woman or girl who is at all interested in basketball or netball, or just getting out and meeting some other girls and women who also love sport and like to meet new people and form connections, and we all have our little quirks with our bodies that mean that we don't quite get around the world the same way as a lot of other people, then we are your group, and we are coming to Hobart and we are coming to Devonport. And please turn up so my boss will let me do this again.
I love it. We're going to put all of that information in the show notes there so you can register for these workshops. You can go to their website and find out more information. But yes, highly encourage you all just to get involved and just to start the conversation about where this might take you as well. So thank you so much, Katherine. I really appreciate you sharing all this. I've learned so much just in this short podcast as well. So wish you all the best with the program and hope we get lots of women coming along.
Thank you very much.
If this episode resonated with you, if you believe in visibility, representation and strong pathways for women in sport, we invite you to join us. Women's Sport and Recreation Tasmania is a growing community of state sporting bodies, clubs, women and allies working together to make sport more inclusive, connected and supportive across our state. By becoming a WSRT member, you're helping amplify women's voices, stories and leadership, both on the field and behind the scenes. Head to wsrt.org.au/membership to learn more about becoming a member, because when we can see women in sport, we can be them.